Good morning again. I think we are ready to start. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining today's session. Before we get into the training itself, we would like to have Angel Chronief, the president of the Plovdiv Chamber of Commerce and Industry, today's partner, to give a small presentation of the chamber and to welcome you as well. Angel, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for coming to this seminar. Actually, we wanted to take advantage of our very good partnership with the EU SME Centre and all the bilateral chambers standing behind it, because they work a lot in order to make an easier access to the Chinese market for the companies. And actually, we want to keep our companies busy. That's why we decided to organize such an event. I manage a Chamber of Commerce, which is located in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and actually Plovdiv and the region around is a winemaking region. And we live in a winemaking country, Bulgaria. And we have a lot of wine producers and wine exporting companies that are attending this seminar. So as a person living in a wine making country, I have to say that we are also living in a wine drinking country. That's why I think this is a very important issue, the Chinese market, because most of the companies are getting very excited when they hear about the Chinese market. But we know that this is not only a huge opportunity, a huge market, but this is also a challenge. That's why we wanted to give a more detailed and methodological, practical approach to this issue. Another thing I would like to mention is that we attended and co-organized a series of seminars a few weeks ago. And these were very practical. I'm talking about Bulgarian companies, and these seminars were delivered by the Bulgaria-China Chambers of Commerce that is based in Sofia. And our companies attending received a very detailed and specific view on the Chinese market and all the tips and tricks about it. So I hope this is going to be the same today. And we're going to have a couple of very good panelists. Also, we noticed that in this, let's say, more than 1 year of pandemic measures, our companies, especially the exporting companies and partially the wine exporters, actually were going up in terms of increase of their exports. And that was kind of additional motivation to search for additional opportunities and markets. So we would like to have this again. Before getting back to the panelists, I would just like to mention that one disappointment for me, but you have to know that we are not going to have wine tasting after the seminar, unfortunately not. But hopefully we would like to meet you and see you next time when we have a wine forum, wine exhibition in Bulgaria, in China, in Europe, elsewhere, because people really badly need that kind of physical contact. So all the success I wish to the seminar. And finally, I would like to say cheers and wish all the wine producers and winemakers a big success on the Chinese market. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you very much, Angel. It is indeed unfortunate that we cannot meet all together to have this webinar offline or with the experts in person. But we have to be grateful that at least we have these online tools that allow us to continue our trainings to the people and continue helping them to enter the Chinese market. So before getting into our subject today, I would like to give a small presentation of the EU SME Centre project for those who haven't heard about us before. So For those who haven't heard about the EU SME Centre before, please allow me a couple of minutes just to give a small introduction of our project. The EU SME Centre was born in 2010, created by the European Commission in order to help European SMEs getting ready to enter the Chinese market. We are currently on the third phase of the project, running from October last year and until March 2022. The main goal of the project is to help companies receive information, advice, training, and support related to the Chinese market. And for that, we collaborate with almost 300 experts between China and Europe. We have an office in Beijing, and the project is implemented by 4 chambers of commerce and 1 business council. You can find the names at the bottom of the page. We have 4 main services. The first of them is the Knowledge Center. We have an online library with 200 market reports, guidelines, and case studies available to download from our website. You only need to register. In terms of topics, the reports some of them are focused on specific industries. For instance, green tech, artificial intelligence, food and beverage, how to import wine into China. But there are also some other reports that are more transversal. For instance, talking about digital marketing or e-commerce, or for instance, how to draft sales contracts with partners in China. The second service is called the Advice Center. We have a complimentary and confidential consultation service for European SMEs. Companies are able to submit their question through this section on the website that you can see here, and our experts will be replying within 2-3 working days. You can select the type of inquiry you would like to ask about between business development, legal, standards and conformity, e-commerce and WeChat, etc. And this will allow us to distribute the questions among our network of experts. Now I would like to talk to you about one of our newest service, which is called the self-diagnosis tool. It's about 4 different quiz that allows companies to understand and evaluate the level of readiness towards the market. All of them takes around 5 minutes, and at the end of the quiz, the system will let you know how prepared you are, and most importantly, which kind of information you are missing in order to be fully prepared to enter the Chinese market. I invite you all to give it a try. It's a very up-to-date technology and with really accurate and useful results. The third service we offer, it's the Training Center, and today's webinar session is a very good example of it. We organize trainings in Europe and in China in collaboration with our partners on a wide range of topics. Normally, the trainings are tailor-made and based on the needs of our partners, and we are happy to discuss with you if you have any specific request in this direction. Last but not least, we also have an advocacy platform organized or provided in collaboration with the European Chambers of Commerce China, where we try to give voice to the concerns and the opinions of the European SMEs that are operating in China. We also provide information regarding the regulatory framework and the changes that are happening in China, and we listen to the voice of the Europeans in regards to what things they would like to implement or improve in the market, and this is materialized in the white position papers we publish on a yearly basis. Last but not least, I would like to talk about our upcoming events. Here you can see the list of activities that we are organizing in the upcoming weeks. If you are interested in any of them, please access our calendar section in our website, and you will be able to register for free. Just for you to know also, we are participating in different trade fairs and exhibitions in China for the time being, as in Europe things are a little bit constrained and restricted right now, but hopefully we will be able to be present in Europe as well. and we are working on the edition and publication of 11 new market reports. So stay tuned to our website and to know where is coming up. Now about today's speakers. Today we have invited Avens, which is a consulting company that helps SMEs from Europe, especially enter the Chinese market. Today we have Pablo Recio, who is the managing director, and Ruben Martinez, who is the operations director as well. The fields of expertise of both experts are very similar, which are China business strategy, market access. Avens is really focused on food and beverage, but also on cosmetics. So these two fields of expertise are laying within the experts. And Pablo started his China experience in 2005 when he moved into China and he created Avens. So he has over 15 years of experience in the market, and he's a frequent speaker of the EU SME Centre, especially in food and beverage related topics. Here you can see, or you can find the access to the website and the contact details of Pablo. The second speaker today is Ruben. As I mentioned, he's the project director at Avens, and he's also an expert on business intelligence, market, and F&B. He previously worked at the Spanish Economic Office in China, and here you also have his contact details. Now, without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to the speakers today. Thank you very much, Pablo.
Thank you, Laura. Ruben, shall we put the slides? Well, the first thing, it is a pleasure to have this new cooperation with the EU SME Centres. It's been a few years working with the EU SME Centre in trying to help European SMEs accessing the Chinese market, and I believe this has actually worked pretty well for the companies as well. And today we have the subject of the wine. It is a very interesting subject because China is growing in wine consumption, and because Europe has a large tradition and production in terms of wine. But the question is, how can we actually take all we can from the Chinese market? Because China seems very promising, but we have had, depending the country of origin and depending the type of winery, very different levels of success, right? So we're going to try to explain this in 1 hour and a half. 1 hour and a half is certainly enough to explain how the market works and latest changes, but it's not enough to go into details for every single subject. For that, you have the questions. So if you're particularly interested about some subject, you do have the questions, like Laura said. Just put your question forward whenever you have them. We may answer them on the spot a bit later or at the very end, okay? The agenda for today consists in the subject that you're seeing in your screen. We're going to have an overview on the wine market in China. We're going to see a bit how consumption is going and will be going. We're going to talk about domestic production. Is that relevant? Is that negative for our interest, or is it positive for our interest since it helps develop the wine culture in China? And we're going to talk about imports. How much are they importing? Who are our competitors? We need to then talk about consumer behavior. And this is when we're going to explain that China, when we talk about the Chinese wine market, there isn't such a thing as a Chinese wine market. There is different markets within the market, not only geographically, but also by many ways of segmentation. That is why you may hear two totally different things from the wine industry in China and both be true. You can hear that they're very price oriented. And then you can also hear that they're growingly sophisticated. And it's true because we're talking about different people within China. We're going to check the main events impacting the wine market right now, which was being COVID-19 and the tariffs that are being imposed on Australia. Some key regulatory aspects, only basic regulatory aspects, the one you really need to keep into consideration, and some marketing and commercial conclusions, okay? What and how is to be done for us to change the dynamic. We're not selling enough in China, but what do we need to do to sell more? This will be divided between my colleague Ruben and I to make the presentation more dynamic. Ruben, will you pass, please? So before, and one more, please. And before I leave the floor to Ruben, I'm just gonna give you the 15-second summary of the Chinese market. you may see that the imports have reduced in the last 3 years, particularly in 2020, but that's COVID, but not only. And you may argue, well, did we get to our ceiling in China? Are we not going to grow anymore? Because it has came down in the last 3 years. And no, the answer is wine culture keeps growing in China and will continue improving its relevance as a wine market. This is what's going to happen midterm and long term. And we have some fluctuations short term, okay? The main reason for 2020 fluctuation was COVID, but the main reason for previous years was actually the amount of wine stock, and perhaps the market is slowing down a bit. Because one thing that we need to understand about China, there is people buying wine considering they will be able to sell it, but then it moves slower than they hoped for, and we have lots of stock of wine in China. And what the market did 2 years ago was a bit correct this. The expectation was not as good, so we stock less wine. But wine culture is going to keep growing because of strong drivers. What is going to fuel the increase on wine consumption in China is, of course, the increase in disposable income, the money that they have to spend in products like wine. Wine being recognized as a healthier alcoholic drink compared to others certainly is helping, and did help in the past. The Chinese industry is investing, and the foreign industry is investing in distribution and promotion, which keeps expanding the market. The product moving to be mostly an image product to penetrate for household consumption. That actually is going to expand the market a lot, and COVID did help on this. And it's going to expand it a lot also for value for the money wines, which is what SMEs are normally about. This process is going to take some time, however. We also have a growing number of Chinese people in contact with the wine culture. More Chinese going abroad for a year, for 5 years. They return after living there. Chinese that were born overseas. A lot of this is happening and moving the market, okay? And it has good prospects because the wine is popular among young consumers, which is extremely important because those are the consumers that you're going to have for 20, 30, 40 years. However, 2 key ideas. Chinese wine market is very competitive because you are trying to get inside, but everybody else is trying to do the same. So it's very competitive. And again, there is not one Chinese market. There is multiple Chinese markets, depends how you look at it. We're going to give you a possible breakdown of the market. Not perfect, not the only one, but it gives you an idea of why some strategies work for somebody and they say things about the Chinese market, and somebody else says something else, and they may be both equally right or wrong. Ruben, the floor is yours, and I'll get back to you when my time comes.
Thank you, Pablo. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those following from Europe. So I'm going to continue what Pablo introduced. So we're going to start speaking about how consumption of wine in China has evolved in the past years. So we can clearly observe in the graph how the Chinese market for wine opened right after China accessed the World Trade Organization and after the tariffs lower for imports of wine. Since that time, consumption of wine has grown in China from about 1 billion liters per year to the current amount, which is a bit below 2 billion liters. This, according to different industry estimations, can vary slightly. Young consumers are the ones leading the market growth. Millennials are the ones that are spending most in wine. And as we will see later, particularly interesting growth among young women that are the ones. It is one of the consumer groups that are gaining interest and is growing faster in the last years. The apparent consumption trend that we can see in the graph is estimated through net trade and domestic production. So that's domestic production plus wine imports minus the exports. But we have to be a bit careful with these figures because they might not be completely accurate, basically because of the way that domestic production is calculated. On the one hand, these statistics, it's underestimated because it's only collected by large wineries, by wineries that reach the size, the standard size established by the government. So the rest of the production from smaller scale wineries is not represented in the graph. However, on the other hand, we have overestimation of wine production by duplicated data. So basically, when wines are produced by blending different wines from different regions, this production is counted twice in both regions. So the methodology is not the best, so these numbers might not be the most accurate. But however, the important thing here is to see how the growing trend in the long term. And as Pablo mentioned, the expectation of the wine culture to keep growing within China. As I said, if we compare different estimations, some numbers, some different reports and different experts vary on this consumption estimation. So for instance, the per capita wine consumption in China is estimated to be between 1.5 and 2 liters per year. So this gives a very clear idea of the gap and the high potential that the Chinese market still has, very far behind countries like Portugal and France, who are the countries with the highest per capita consumption in the world, with over 60 and 50 liters per person. And to compare with more similar countries, Japan is the country in Asia with the highest per capita consumption, about 3 liters, which is still significantly higher than Chinese consumption. Red wine is the main preference among Chinese consumers, but the interest on whites, sparkling wines, and other varieties is growing. Also, as Pablo has mentioned, there is a perceived shift toward better quality wines, with consumers learning more and becoming more expert into the different products. Especially, we can observe this trend in Tier 1 cities, in the Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, but also other bigger Tier 2 cities. The value for money, consumers are looking more and more, not only to expensive wines, but also to those good wines that are more affordable, as wine consumption become more common. However, for the mainstream consumers or for occasional consumers, the key decision factors when purchasing a wine remain the origin and the price, very connected to the image aspect of wine consumption. In Tier 1 cities and even in some Tier 2 cities, we have some more sophisticated group of consumers that appreciate other aspects, like they pay more attention to specific wine regions or grape varieties and are looking for more unique wines in terms of production methods or wines that are a bit more difficult to find in the market. And also one of the main changes in consumption habits pushed by COVID was the home consumption and the development, or even more, it was already important before, but the importance of e-commerce as a sales channel for wine. It's also important to mention Chinese wines. Chinese wine industry is gaining importance in the last years. There is a lot of attention from companies. There's heavy investment, both from domestic large companies, both state companies and private companies, and also international players. And the industry, it's introducing foreign experts. So the quality of the Chinese wines is improving and the production methods are improving. So we will see how they become more and more important, at least in the domestic market. However, at the same time, China has some difficulties and they have some disadvantages in terms of wine production. Conditions are not the best. So this will limit the capacity of these companies, especially to compete internationally in terms of price and quality. However, in China, it is expected that the demand keeps growing, both from government purchases. Domestic wines, especially the most important brands, are heavily promoted by government. They are used at party and government meetings and important receptions, but also from Chinese consumers that will both those that prefer domestic production and favor Chinese wines over imported ones, and but also those with a bit more knowledge and looking for different wines, and some Chinese brands will offer definitely good alternatives in terms of quality in the next years. Especially some regions like Ningxia are the ones that seems to be coming closer in terms to international standards, while other regions have a bigger gap to cover and will unlikely be able to compete in the international ground. To highlight a few of the producing regions in China, we have this map. Shandong province is the main producing area. In particular, a small city called Penglai, and also some located wineries in Qingdao. Hebei is the second province after Shandong. The two of them together represent more than half of wine quantity produced in China. Beijing and the neighbor city Tianjin have also a certain tradition of wine production, and in particular in Beijing, in the last years, there are many small-scale wineries opening up. Regions in the northeast, like Jilin, also have some important production. In this case, from different grape varieties, more adapted and with stronger resistance to cold weather in this part of the country. Xinjiang is actually the biggest producer of grapes in China, but it has disadvantage in location, and it's one of the regions more underdeveloped in China at the moment. And other important region is Ningxia, that I mentioned already. That is one of the provinces that offers better conditions in terms of light, temperature, and access to water. And it's actually getting a lot of support from the government to develop the wine industry. And there are other regions like north of Yunnan in the south of China and Gansu province that have also certain relevance in wine production. Chinese wines, although I mentioned that they will have some difficulties to compete internationally, they are gaining reputation. And in the last years, we have seen how some of these brands and Chinese wines are getting different international awards. As I said, there is a lot of investment coming to the industry, so it is expected that it keeps improving and they keep gaining recognition abroad, especially in certain provinces like Ningxia and some small wineries, more specialized and trying to focus more on quality wines to grasp the opportunity on the consumers that are looking for alternatives to traditional wines. This is just some of the examples. As I will explain in a moment, some of the limitations of the industry are related to land and the soil quality and the weather, and that affects the production cost. And that is related to the pricing. Some of the Chinese brands have, let's say, a bit ambitious expectations in terms of pricing, and the price range from qualities that are scored within similar range the gap can be very, very big. So you have some examples in this slide. The price can go from 60 euros to almost to above 300. So although domestically this positioning may work for some brands, it's going to be very difficult. One of the wineries is one of the most famous Chinese wineries, and it's backed by COFCO, which is a state-owned company and actually the biggest food processing holding group in China. Among its success in the wine industry, we have to mention that it was the first brand to develop dried red and dry white wines, also the first one developing sparkling wines. Great Wall is headquartered in Hebei province, but they produce in different regions across China, the ones that we mentioned before. And it's one of the brands, one of the companies that is being more promoted and is more, it's very commonly used in government events and other receptions of state heads of other countries when they come to China. And they have also, as other brands, they have also been gaining in recent years, they have gained several wine awards. However, although this increase in attention in the industry and the improvements in the last years, and although Chinese wines might keep growing domestically and the demand will certainly be stronger in the coming years, it's at this point they cannot compete internationally with the wineries from Europe or even with the new world producers because they are in a more disfavorable situation. Some of these limitations include land and soil constraints. In terms of land, China is a country that depends on imports for food, and that means that if they want to increase the wine production, they have to prioritize wine over other products. Weather conditions across the country are not the best either. And in general, there is a lack of coordination and development of the industry in terms of marketing, in terms of cultivating technology. And in general, overall, at this point, they are not in condition to compete internationally, at least in the short term. So we're going to pass to speak about the imports. As Pablo have mentioned, in the last 3 years, we have seen how the imports have been falling. This is not a reflection of a market being saturated or have reached its peak, but instead it's a result of the last year, the effects of COVID, and the previous year's adjustment in the excess of stocks of wine. Since 2017, when the imports reached 7.5 million of hectoliters, they have been going down. The deepest fall was last year in 2020, when due to COVID, restaurants remained closed for several months, and even after they reopened, outdoors activity was at pretty low levels. So although there was a certain shift to home consumption, this was not enough to compensate the negative conditions. So in 2020, we had a decrease of 30% on the imports. Basically, the different categories of wine, still wine, bottled wine, bulk wine, and sparkling wine decrease. However, in the same period, we have seen that the price of the different wine categories have followed a different trend. So still wine and sparkling wine grew 4% and 8% per year on average in the period of the graph, while bulk wine remained at the same level. So as we mentioned, this declining trend in the imports, it's due to different factors. COVID was the reason in 2020, and the reasons before were the excess of stocks accumulated in previous years and adjustments. And also, to a certain extent, industry consolidation, meaning smaller importers disappearing, opportunistic traders disappearing. So that's basically importers becoming bigger and more professional as a sign of a more mature market. And also, other factors to mention here are the slowing level of the economic growth in China that was already taking place before COVID, And we cannot forget the uncertainty from 2018 over the trade war disputes between US and China. So category by category, starting by bottled wine, which is the biggest category of wine imports in China. Imports reached 5.5 million hectoliters in 2017, and they decreased in the next years. And the 5 main countries represent 95% of the imports. 90% and 95 if we consider the top 10. The most important thing that we can see in the graph is how French was losing market share, mostly against Australia. So we can see this surpass from 2018, when the distribution of the market share between France and Australia was about 40 to below 30, and these values changed in 2020. In terms of values, in terms of volumes, Australia and France are at similar levels in 2020. Regarding average prices, the comparison between different countries, Spain is the most competitive one, as we can see, with the price below $3 per liter, about 2.6 in 2020, and followed by Chile and Portugal, which are both below the $4 per liter. And New Zealand is by far the most expensive. But we have to remember that they have an advantage in terms of tariffs due to the free trade agreement with China, same as Australia and same as Chile. For sparkling wine, Italy is the market leader. And the trend was positive until 2019, but I guess every other country was affected in 2020. In the case of sparkling wine, the imports are even more concentrated in few countries. These top 5, Italy, Spain, France, Australia, and Germany, represent 95%. But besides Italy, the rest of countries, European countries, Spain and France, were decreasing on average in the period from 2015 to 19. And Germany and Italy were the ones that kept positive growth, especially Germany, 3%, the country that was growing the most among these top 5. We have to highlight 2 other countries here, Lithuania and Hungary, that had a very positive growth during these years, 25% for Lithuania, and Hungary, against the trend in 2020, grew 60% in the last year. Regarding price, Spain is again the most competitive country, followed by Germany and Hungary and South Africa. And we have to point here at the French price, which is above all this. It's not even shown in the graph because prices range above $12 per liter in 2015 to double that price in 2020. So it's way beyond the rest of competitors. Bulk wine, which is basically used in China to bottle as domestic wine or to be blended with domestic production, and it's sold in China as a product of China. It's as you can see, the main characteristic is that it's cheap, very cheap, and the main advantage for producing countries is price above any other thing. Following the same trend of the other categories, the imports fell in 2020, and this is the category with the highest concentration of the imports in these few countries that represent 98%. Besides these 5, Moldova is the country taking the 6th position, and another country doing quite well, and it reached about 1% of market share in 2019. We have to highlight here the development of Argentina from 2018, when it's starting, basically Argentina started exporting bulk wine to China in 2019, and since then they have positioned as the second main suppliers right after Chile. And these two countries are the ones that probably will benefit the most, especially in this category, from the tariffs imposed to Australia. And regarding price, here Argentina has a clear advantage. It's the cheapest one with it's below 40 cents per liter, and Spain comes second, slightly above with 60 cents per liter, and Moldova similar price level, 68 cents per liter. As I mentioned, this bulk wine is mainly used for to be bottled as a Chinese product and sold in the domestic market under Chinese brands, either as it is imported or blended with domestically produced wine. And here we'd like to also present some of the situation of Bulgarian wines in the market and how the imports have evolved in the last years. Following similar trend, the imports peaked in 2017. Still wine is the main category, while sparkling wine takes a very little amount for now. And here we have some examples of the Bulgarian products that can be found online, with the rose wine being one of the products that it's being more promoted, and also other varieties of red and white and other sparkling wines. Bulgarian wines are not very famous in the market in the moment, but as the market gets more developed and there are growing groups of sophisticated consumers looking for new origins and for different varieties of grapes and wines, Bulgaria could position themselves as a certainly unique origin, and especially this rose wine, which is quite interesting and distinctive, could be quite attractive for and appealing for some Chinese customers. So I'm going to give floor to Pablo again, and he's going to explain it to deeper little about consumer behavior and the different markets in China.
Thank you, Ruben. So if we go to the next slide, basically what we're going to try to explain now is one possible division. I'm not going to say the only way in which the market can be divided in China, but one possible division of the Chinese market. And this is very important because when we talk about the strategy for China, it's common sense that we need to consider who are we selling to. This is very important. This is extremely important. And we think that this is the type of question that we should ask ourselves, but we don't always do. Many times what we do is we want to sell in China, want to sell in the Chinese market, and then we say the Chinese market is getting more sophisticated, or the Chinese market only wants this and this over country, or they only want price, or they only want discounts for online sales. And this depends who are we trying to sell it to and what channel are we using. And it's extremely important. This means that your wine may have very different pricing point in the Chinese market depending on your strategy, considerably different. So what type of consumers are there? Many, but let's see this possible division. We have sophisticated consumers. Sophisticated consumers don't have to be people that have studied wine for years. Sophisticated consumers are those that are buying wine based on value for the money, based on specific characteristics of the wine and flavor, that are looking for an experience. These are people that have had contact with the wine industry. Many Chinese have lived abroad for a year, for 5 years. It depends, but they've lived abroad now, or they've not lived abroad, but they have had a lot of contact with wine industry. This group is growing, maybe not 2020, but it's growing a lot. And then when they're in China, they're used to consuming wine, okay? So these are the ones that will pay more attention to different factors, distinctive issues, grape variety, wine production methods. I'm looking for natural wines. I'm looking for organic wines. Unique characteristics. And this is mostly our target group for many of you. unless you want to sell price, or gift channel, which is price and packaging. That's a bit what happens to us, okay? This group of people are mostly in T1, that is Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, which are also the most competitive market for wine in China at the same time. Mostly live there, but there's a growing number in T2. Now, I'm not saying that the whole mass of consumers on T1, on Beijing or Shanghai, are all sophisticated consumers at all. There is a growing number of these. But on Shanghai, you also have mainstream consumers, affluent consumers, companies, and the gifting channel operating, okay? So this first type of consumer is rarely seen on T3 cities. It's mostly seen in T1 and T2, mostly in T1, but that's where it's hard to get them because it's quite competitive. For some of us, maybe T2 is a better option. Then we have the mainstream consumer. This is the people who are buying most of the wine. Eventually, these mainstream consumers will turn into sophisticated consumers, but not for now. Some of them never will. They do irregular or somewhat frequent sales, but not much. Remember, the average consumption in China is not that high, but let's say wine is something they will buy every month, probably not every week. And these people choose not so much based on specific characteristics, on simple things they can recognize is what's important for them. Origin, price, image, the bottle design. This is extremely important. Marketing, of course, the way we sell the product, the channel, the discounts, the health image of wine is very important, particularly for red wine. So these are less value for the money consumers. These are more origin, price, image consumers. And these are everywhere, T1, T2, and T3. We have affluent consumers, people with a lot of money, for which wine could be value for the money, but it's mostly image. And they buy very famous brands that are produced worldwide, and they enjoy experiences, because the thing is, to sell wine in a market that is very competitive, it's not just the wine anymore, you need to sell the experience. We'll see a few examples at the very end of the presentation. We have the gifting channel. Wine is a very good product for gifting. There is a strong gift culture in China. Wine is a good, generally accepted product for gifting. What happened in 2020 is no gatherings, no holiday celebration. So this channel basically was tiny, virtually disappeared. But it will come back because it's in the Chinese culture, okay? This is a lot about the image as well. There is bottles being recirculated of wine, gifted and regifted through, particularly for individuals, companies, a bit less so. And then if we sell price mostly, large companies are large buyers of wine for their employees, thousands of employees getting a bottle of wine for Chinese New Year or for the anniversary of the company. These are also operating there, okay? But price is a key element. So as you see in this division, which again is not the only possible division, you need to think, who are you targeting? Because that is going to change a bit how you do marketing, if you provide exclusivity or you don't, if you need to change anything from your labeling or not, if that is to be done in China or in Europe. So there isn't one Chinese market. There is many markets, and this is one way of dividing it. Once we have clear who are we selling to, half of your questions are going to become also more evident. Ruben, can we change? It is true that in general, Chinese consumers are staying more. Obviously, during COVID, they stayed more, but in China now, although we have some small limitations, we're free to move anywhere. We just wear the mask, use applications to scan codes to come in and out, but that's it. But there is still, COVID has impacted the industry. In the short term, that was bad, but in the long term, this will probably be positive. We'll see it in a moment. So online recreational behaviors and home consumption is expected to grow, which is good, we believe, for value for the money. And we believe European SMEs sell value for the money when it comes to their product. it allowed certain social consumption to personal consumption. Restaurants are still recovering. That has affected particularly some brands that were selling a lot on restaurants because of the channel distribution. They were looking for consumers that were less price sensitive, or they were directly high-end product, okay? And the client is strongly looking for convenience. And this means that we need to keep an eye on e-commerce. Right now, while explaining at the end, we will explain marketing, but now there is not, I'm selling on e-commerce or I'm selling outside e-commerce. I have an online structure or I don't have an online structure. This goes all together. There is no separation anymore. We need to connect everything. Chinese for sure paying attention to nutrition, healthcare, fitness, and that is going to help wine, particularly red wine, to develop. Ruben, please. Now, more things about consuming wine in China. The market is still in a point when commercial efforts and education go hand in hand, particularly if you are not a main origin. Then you need to do basically education at the same time that you do commercial things. We'll see a few examples, but you cannot disconnect these two. Chinese are looking for experiences. So when they're drinking a wine from Bulgaria, we need to transport them at the history of Bulgaria and what is unique. They may or may have not been there, but in either case, we need to take advantage drinking Bulgarian wine, and this extends obviously to all our viewers from any other region in Europe, has to be a little bit of an experience, because it's just about the wine. Again, country, origin, image, and price will basically be too heavy for newcomers. That's why the wine market is so concentrated. So again, you're selling an experience, you're selling an origin. Chinese consumers, I will certainly target younger consumers in general. They get ideas faster. They will be consumers for many years to come. So I would say between 25 and 35 is the best target group that I would have, or I would recommend for many of you. I'm not saying for everybody, but for many of you, if we're trying to introduce a wine that is less commonly accepted in the market. Remember, don't focus too much on what you see on data on imports. Ruben has explained it. I'm not saying data from imports is irrelevant, but it's not exactly accurate for a number of reasons. Chinese government has worked on it and has done a good job in improving the situation, but because of tariffs, amounts get still under-declared by some exporters and importers. Recently, not that long ago, a container declaring a value of 30,000 euros was inspected by the Chinese authorities and basically determined that the real value of that container was over 400,000 euros. So what you're seeing on the statistics is not necessarily how the market is behaving for a number of things that we have explained, okay? Ruben, can we move forward a little bit? So this is how the market is developing, okay? Different speeds for different people that we need to approach differently. How is the distribution for wine? Right now, either I could say that is extremely complex or that is extremely simple. The point is, now there's many players. Internet has made it possible that the product is not even imported. This is what you see on your screen on the far right, CBEC, cross-border e-commerce. The wine is outside China in the port, but did not pass customs, has not been imported. And then you can buy online from there. Truth is, for cross-border e-commerce may be good for an experience, or if there is a platform where you can access easily, but it's not a place where most of the wine sales are happening. I have to say that probably for wine, which is a product not that hard to import, it makes more sense that you import. You can import it yourself, like having a woofie, but for most of you, I wouldn't recommend that. You need to work with distributors. You can work with one or several. The issue of the exclusivity takes a while to explain, but long story short, if you have several brands, you can provide exclusivity. It seems to be the strategy of many exporters, with many brands provide exclusivity. or some kind of exclusivity per channel, per region, for a specific brand. Be careful in any case with internet sales now. Price is very transparent. So if you don't give exclusivity, you need to have a clear view of your pricing. And if you have several brands, it can give you a lot of options for the Chinese market. If you just have one, that's fine. But then you have to be extremely careful taking care of it, okay? Then we have national importers. National importers means large companies that will tell you that they sell China-wise. Nobody sells China-wise, but their network of connections will sell on the key cities. And these may be worth giving them exclusivity. What you really have is a number of regional distributors with some sub-distributors. And that is going to be the case for most of us. People running mostly wines. Wine importers mostly do wine. They may do some spirits, they may do some beer, they may do some food, but normally they don't mingle too much. If you do wines, 80% of what you do is wines, particularly if you're going to the sophisticated target consumer. If you're going to the company employees, then no, there's all sorts of traders. But that's not the case if you're actually going for the sophisticated consumers that will buy a wine that is a bit new, okay? So different options to access the market. There are importers of wine anywhere in China. So you don't have to go to Beijing, Shanghai. That's where most of them may be, but that's not where all of them are. Many companies actually just run the logistics. So in terms of importing and distribution, there is a lot of options, many options. Is taking care of the brand what should worry us the most, not just having a distributor. Ruben, can we move forward? Wine distribution. Another thing that we need to understand is a bit how price is built up. Price comes in the next slide, but a few ideas. When you see the CIF price, all the statistics that Ruben have been showing, there is a trick to those, which is after that, some people, most of us will pay, all of us from Europe will pay 40% tax tariff if it is bottled wine, or 20% if it is bulk wine, while countries with Australia, New Zealand, not Australia anymore, but previously Australia, certainly New Zealand and Chile, will have zero tax rate, which means that we have the concept of landed cost. Okay, we have the cost, CIF cost, but then we have the cost once you pass through customs. And then the price difference changes a little bit. So Australia does not seem as cheap, but it gets cheaper because they have no tariff. New Zealand is not cheap, but obviously doesn't get more expensive because it has no tariff. And Chile looks cheap, but when you consider that they have no tariff, they really have somewhat of a price advantage, okay? Price advantage is relevant for bulk. It's extraordinarily important for bulk. It's less important for premium wines, but for the average, it has its importance. So for us, we have 40% tariff. Then we have 10% consumption tax, which is a luxury tax. That happens, that is paid also by Chinese domestic producers, all the same. And then we have a 13% VAT. If you add all these, it's something like, in sequence, it's something like 50%. But our prices increase more than that. Why? Ruben, can we change? So our prices change quite a bit because we'll go back in a moment. Leave me here. Our prices change quite a bit because of distribution in China. There is a lot of wine stock. Depending the channel that you're using, rents in China are quite expensive. So if you sell in an expensive restaurant, that restaurant is paying a very expensive rent, really expensive. So obviously, depending on your strategy, that's why you need to choose a target. Your price changes a lot. Let's say that pricing will multiply times 2.5 or 3 from one place, let's say from one shop in Europe to the equivalent shop in China, the price will be 2.5 times more or 3 times more. But this depends greatly. There is companies which strategy has been reduced a bit because of e-commerce. There is companies which strategies try to sell cheap on e-commerce and do discounts and promotions. And those you can find with a lower difference than that. And there are wines that are trying to sell only at restaurants high-end restaurants. And then the difference is much more than this. So depending on your strategy, your same wine that you're selling in Europe, say that it's selling at 10 euros, may have a very different pricing in China depending on your strategy. It will depend on your target audience. It will depend on the channel you choose. If you choose to sell online, which is the fastest growing, great, but margins are more tight. It depends on the region for a number of reasons. Beijing, Shanghai has very expensive rent costs, leasing for the space, so restaurants will be very expensive. It depends on your long-term strategy. It depends on who is holding the stock, if you are or they are. It depends on discounts that you do for 11.11, for entry points, and it depends on exclusivity. So your price is very variable, but consider that you're going to move normally between 2.5 to 3 times more, with a slow tendency towards declining pricing. All right, Ruben, can we go up one slide? So the wine distribution, where the consumer is going to buy my wine? Okay, well, you can go to retail and specialized stores. These are holding, but they're not growing that much. To be honest, wine now is mostly improving on restaurants, not as good as the past, but for some wines, that's the key market. The sommelier has to sell specific wines, otherwise they don't sell by themselves. They're growing online and they're growing on direct sales and special dinners that we'll see at the end. Okay, convenience stores have wines, but the price range and the agreements with major corporations makes very hard for an SME to enter there. You can enter retail, however, with your distributor. Food service is a good way, and you can educate your consumers there, but we're still recovering. E-commerce is the fastest way, but you need to manage it. You need to support your distributor to manage it. It also takes time. It also takes money, and your margins will be tighter. Cross-border e-commerce has very small advantages for wine. Actually, only if you can piggyback. You have some advantages, but are very small. So only if you can piggyback in an initiative, I would do cross-border e-commerce. It's not that it's a bad strategy, but for a little more effort, you can put your wine in China and then try multi-strategy options. And we have the gift channel, which is not a channel anymore. Actually, it's a culture. It used to be a gifting channel. Now everything goes online. All right, so these are how channels are behaving. For us, it's going to be food service and e-commerce. And I'm going to let the floor back to Ruben, who is going to tell us, after we've seen how the market divides, what has affected the market lately, and how is that going to impact you?
Yes, so we're going to see basically how's the situation in the market in 2021, what are the main events that have been shaping the market from last year, and what's the impact on consumption, on consumers, and what's the situation regarding Australia and how it's going to affect other countries trying to gain this market share that is going to be left by Australia. So COVID had a deep impact on the wine market, as we have seen already. On imports, it had a 30% effect in 2020, and this was divided across the different wine categories. So for bottled wines, it decreased 31% in volume and a bit less, 25 in value. Bulk wine, a bit less, 24 in volume, 37 in value, and sparkling wine also fell in similar levels. However, the important thing here is, as we have mentioned, we expect, and it's already happening, 2021 to be the recovery of the Chinese economy in general and the market. Consumers are recovering confidence and are going out more and more. Basically, China has contained COVID very well. Right now we are in a much more stable situation than basically anywhere else in the world, and we are pretty much at normal situation at pre-COVID levels. So the industry is optimistic that during this year the wine market will go back at least to 2019 levels, and in the coming years, as we have explained for different reasons Pablo has mentioned, we expect the wine culture to keep growing and the market to gain even more importance. There has been some changes regarding consumption habits due to COVID. Although in overall terms, it had an impact and it reduced wine imports and consumption. For those consumers that have a more common habit of drinking wine, it actually had a lower impact because those are the ones who shifted more to purchasing online and to drinking wine at home instead of going out and drinking in restaurants, which is the most common channel. This had been happening for years before, but of course COVID accelerated this trend because of the restrictions of going out and because of the closing of many shops and restaurants. So basically wine consumption had been always associated to gatherings, to dinners, and to leisure time. And lately, it's nowadays that we can consider it a trend, the habit of drinking at home. It's yet to be seen how intensively this trend remains in the coming years. Maybe not as much as it was in 2020, but definitely it's expected that wine penetrates household consumption. And this was, of course, this was pushed during the last year due to the lack of social gatherings. It was impossible to do any physical events because of the restrictions. So the distributors were promoting this social drinking, home drinking, also through online channels and social media, with the collaboration of KOLs, with some online events, online parties, and promoting wine consumption at home and online purchases through the lockdown. One of the groups, consumer groups, that has been targeted the most and that this use of mobile and social media have been targeting the most is women, especially millennial women, those young women born in the 1990 decade. Regarding the product categories, the segment of luxury wines have been more affected than the rest for several reasons. Basically, luxury wines, expensive wines, are the ones more deeply associated with this image and status element of consumption. When you drink it in a social gathering or in an event. And this element, of course, when you are drinking at home alone, it becomes less important. So that have affected the level of purchasing of this kind of wines. That has benefited more from the promotion of online channel, like affordable wines, like from those consumers that basically want to drink wine at home but are not looking for a very prestigious wine or a wine from France because they want to impress other people. So those have been looking for more affordable wines that offer a better quality price ratio. So again, we have to see how this trend unfolds from this year and in the coming years, if this goes back to normal as consumption in restaurants recovers, or this becomes a more normal situation. The other key event that affects the market right now and started from last year is the tariffs imposed to Australian wine. So what happened with this? So basically, China opened an investigation against Australia. Chinese Alcohol and Drinks Association claimed that Australian wines were subsidized by the government. China opened an investigation that resulted in temporary anti-dumping tariffs from over 100 to over 200%, which basically means that the market for Australian wines has been pretty much closed. And these tariffs have been confirmed for the next 5 years, just in March. So now Australia probably has, Australia will likely complain to the World Trade Organization, but this will take years to resolve. Why has this happened? Well, of course, the Chinese government say this is strictly commercial and anti-dumping issues. Australia has a different position. The bilateral relations between both countries have been quite tense in the last years for several reasons, but the 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 thing that triggered this tariff issue with China was the fact that Australia supported the US when they demanded an international investigation on the origins of COVID. So as a retaliation, China applied different restrictive measures on not only on wine, but different Australian products, including beef, barley, oats, and there might be others that could be targeted in similar ways besides this. And another reason that is not so mentioned is that the success and the growth of Australian wine in China was seen by the industry as a threat to the development of the domestic industry, and that's have played a role also in the imposition of these tariffs. So what's going to happen now? So, well, of course, for Australia, this is a very difficult situation right now. It's going to affect the industry, especially those small wineries that relied on China in some cases as the sole international market. Of course, Australia will appeal, but the resolution will take years. So in the meanwhile, what's going to happen to the China market? Well, basically, Australia will disappear or almost disappear from the market, and the rest of countries will be trying to cover up that gap left by Australia. And countries in a better position to do so are, depending on the category, are different. So for bulk wine, Chile and Argentina are in the best position because they have the price advantage, especially Chile, which they, besides the price positioning, they have no tariffs. And for bottled wine, well, here it would be more split between different countries. Chile will probably take part of it, again, enjoying the advantage thanks to the free trade agreement. The US may take some. They may benefit from the signing of the phase 1 trade agreement with China. Basically, China, since last year, has been pushing the imports of agricultural products from the US, prioritizing above other markets. But for wine, it's not so clear how much advantage they can take. And other European countries, France will try to regain market share, and other competitors like Italy and Spain are also in a position to take part of this market share and market hole left by Australian wines. So now we're going to look a bit at some of the basic regulatory aspects. As Pablo has mentioned, wine is not a very complicated product to import to China, but still we'd like to highlight a few things that are important for exporters when trying to access the market. The first thing is the trademark. It is very important that you protect your brand before taking any actions. So before not only selling it's important that you register your trademark. These fake products and brand imitations, it's a very common thing in China. It might be a bigger problem for well-known brands, but in any case, everyone should do it. It's important to protect your brand. And it's actually a pretty, it's not an expensive process. It's a bit long though, but it's something that all the companies should do as a precaution step. Trademark registration in other countries doesn't work for mainland China, which have a special system that works for mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So you have to register your trademark in China, even though you have done it before in other markets. You have to do it also because otherwise someone else might do it for you. So in China, and then when you try to do it, you find that it has been registered before, and they might ask you for money. So you have to be quick and do it as the first step. The trademark registration in China works by category. So wine falls under class 33, and that protects your product for all different wine and alcoholic beverage categories, except for beer. It is a different one. The whole process takes between 15 to 18 months if there is no problems and it goes smoothly. And the investment is very low. So all companies must be willing to spend this small amount of money in order to protect their brand against fake and imitation products. It is also advisable that you do it under your own name. So in case you have already started contacts with some importers, probably they will offer to do it for you. We suggest not to do so. It's better to keep the ownership of the brand for whatever problem that may arise in the future. And because in the end it's your brand and you want to keep control of it. You have to consider the adaptation to the Chinese name and the logo. And I mentioned already, be extra careful when you show new brands or new products at trade exhibitions, websites, when you send brochures to contacts in China. So be aware of these practices. Regarding the labeling, the different information that is required that has to appear in the back label. It's based on the different regulations that you can see in the bottom of the slide, the different standards that apply to wine and to labeling of prepackaged food, and also regarding the addition of food additives in the wine. So the information has to appear. It's quite basic, the name, the ingredients, the alcohol content, shelf life, food additives, and the barcode. All this, as you can see. Also the health warning. You have to warn consumers about excessive alcohol drinking. And of course, this information you provide has to be consistent with the export documents that will be required by customs for the clearance of the products. You have two options here to stick the label. You can either choose to have the Chinese label from production at home, or you can decide to stick the label once it arrives to the Chinese port. So the importer or yourself can do it after arrival. In any case, you have to consider what's most suitable for you based on the production amount, on the sales, and what suits better your needs. Something important here, and something that has been becoming more and more relevant, and Pablo has already introduced a bit, and we'll see more examples later, is the use of QR codes to link the product to the WeChat accounts or the websites to get this O2O integration that is becoming essential in order to promote your wines in China. Another aspect to consider in the label, another piece of information that is important, is if you decide to include any awards or international recognitions that the wines have obtained, which is recommended that you do so, because it will basically will raise the reputation of the wine, and especially for those consumers looking for uniqueness and for special wines, this might be relevant, or geographical indications, these kind of things that you decide to include in the label. They have to be supported by documents that you need to provide for verification. And basically, the label filling system is similar. Either you choose to stick the label from origin or you decide to do it upon arrival at the port. For those products that are imported for the first time to China, you need to provide a copy of the original label with the translation and the Chinese label for customs check and verification. So connected to this, we'd like to introduce a little bit about the geographical indications and its importance in China. You may have heard about the recent agreement that entered into force between the EU and China regarding geographical indications. This is a bilateral agreement that protects 100 European GI in China and 100 Chinese GI in the EU. Actually, it's 96 European GI after Brexit. Originally, it was 100. And among these 96, more than half of them, half of the European GI products covered in these agreements are wine products. And this list of 100 will be expanded to 175 additional items within the next 4 years. So that means more geographical indications from Europe will be included, and definitely more wines. And here, Bulgarian wines might have an opportunity to benefit from this recognition. Bulgaria has currently more than 50 PDO wines and 2 PGI production regions, which you can see in the map, and also already the wine production regions at the beginning. And here we can see the 2 of them, the Danubian Plain and the Thracian Lowlands, have the recognition as PGI. So this could be one more feature and one more distinctive factor for Bulgarian wines in the future when this agreement gets expanded. And I'm gonna pass back to Pablo, who's gonna give you some additional tips on how to do promotional and marketing actions for imported wine.
Okay, and before I jump into this section where we're going to start with marketing, but then we're going to go a bit into sales and operations, I would like to encourage all of you, if you have questions, to make them. We've already got 5, right? 4 in the Q&A panel and 1 that has been done in the regular panel regarding statistics, streaming e-commerce, pricing, gift channel, and trademark. We will answer these questions at the end. I'm going to continue now, but maybe, for example, streaming and e-commerce, we will soon understand how it works, and I will answer the question. So please remember, make your questions. It's important. That's where we have the chance. Don't send an email 2 hours after the event. I have this question. Now is the moment to do it, and everybody will be able to learn from the experience. Marketing, and marketing will then connect it to sales. What is important that we should know? Well, we know that we don't have a crazy amount of budget, so we cannot do anything and everything that we would like to do to promote our wines in China. Major corporations do that, but we cannot. That's why the first thing we need to know about marketing is, who am I targeting it to? That's the first thing. I go back to the type of consumers. The second thing that we need to understand is that marketing does not operate in China as it does in Europe. And this is also where a lot of common mistakes come from. It's not just the language, it's many things. It's understanding, for example, that China is a very advanced e-commerce and online market, more advanced when it comes to using cell phones to access online platforms, online communication, and purchases. That's where everybody would go now to do purchases in China, is the app on the cell phone. They will not buy the plane ticket on the laptop. They will do it on the cell phone. For a number of reasons, this happens on the cell phone. So we need to adapt our marketing to these things. Chinese are also very visual. We're going to see it in a moment. So being very visual and doing promotion on a cell phone means quality videos, quality images, and very, very, very little writing. And we tend to do it the other way. In any case, We're going to do a lot of, we're going to do effort online, as much effort as we can. We're going to do a design for cell phone. And furthermore, we have to do integration of these with our physical product. The key for marketing now in China is not whether I do physical store and physical marketing offline or if I do online. No matter how little you do, you need to connect them. The best example is what Ruben have explained. All your bottles from now on will have the QR code that will connect to your WeChat shop, account, or the WeChat account of your group of wineries or your region. Something that will provide the information that you're not there to explain. This information will be adapted to China. These are the keys for marketing in China at the moment. Let's see them with more detail. Ruben, please. So, thanks. So what is the O2O integration? It's many things, but in this more simple and easy to understand visual concept is what you're seeing. You have a bottle that has a QR code, and that will connect you with your WeChat account, okay? And if you don't have a WeChat account, it's probably useful for you to have it, whether it is by yourself or you cooperate with your distributor, but then you need to really be on top of the distributor. Another common mistake is letting the distributor do everything, and then they obviously, if you're too busy to develop your brand, they're busier to develop your brand, so they don't do it or they don't do it right. So the very least, this, how are we going to put the QR code? Well, it's easy. When you're putting the labels at the port in China, you just make the label slightly bigger and you include the QR code, okay? So this is going to be the most basic integration that we do. We don't do leaflets attached to the bottle anymore. We don't have a person next to the bottle all the time. We have a QR code allowing the consumers to go to a very visual, interesting account where you tell your story with images, okay? Ruben, please. And why with images? See, what you're seeing here with these bars is one product. And this product basically is promoted in different ways. In Europe, you have it there, Amazon UK. That is the amount of information needed, the black bar, and it's mostly written. If you look the same product in China, you see the amount of information given is the red bar, and even for Amazon is the white bar. Is twice or 3 times more information that you provide in China, but you write very little. It's mostly videos, it's mostly images. That's how you tell a story in China. So we need to adapt to this. We don't have much budget, so we'll have to be creative. We'll have to keep things simple, but professional and operational. Okay, Ruben, please. And there are examples. I'm not saying things that this is different examples getting from wine from JD.com, including Chinese brands. And this is the type of advertising that normally works for them. Bulgaria also, or a distributor that gets Bulgarian wine and commercializes in China has also adapted, because the distributor is Chinese and has totally adapted to the Chinese way of doing marketing. We're going more in this direction. This is what we need to do. This requires the budget, or the same or less budget, that going to an additional fair. And a fair may not have always the level of impact that we want, or even less budget. So this is the type of marketing we're looking at the moment. Where these pictures are done in Europe or are done in China or half and half, it depends on your budget, but they're very creative solutions for very decent budget, okay? Very visual, transmitting the experience. Yet again, if you're selling your wine, tough odds, plenty of wines. What you're selling to be really unique is you're selling an experience, okay? To have something extra, you're selling the experience. Ruben, please. There is promotion of Bulgarian wine in China. If you look for it, I will keep it. I will personally maybe would keep it slightly more visual, but the aim is adequate. You do have this promotion, and I think we need more of this, and we need more visual content to add to this. But this is the direction. And we need to target these to the sophisticated consumers. Remember, unless you want to sell price, the sophisticated consumers. And those are probably in 12 cities where I would try to do events with my distributor or my distributor and their sub-distributors. And the process will take some time, but this is where we need to go. Also, we need to go to fairs. So let's see, next slide, Ruben. Of course, there is many other possibilities. There is a large amount of platforms in China. So here's when I come back to how about the live streaming for e-commerce? Does it work? It can work really well. Answering the questions of one body from our audience, it can work really well. But normally to be effective, you need to have really, it's not cheap. It's expensive. We're going to see a case study in a moment. It is expensive, which means you already need to have a certain level of development in the market to be able to use an expensive KOL and get the return of investment. You need a good distribution channel. You need to be addressing your target audience. You need to make sure that you're not only addressing a niche. Also, most of the KOLs that reach a lot of people, millions of people, they're not normally normally targeting more mainstream. So if we're doing sophisticated, we need to look for a live streaming or a Douyin video that goes to our sophisticated audience, not to the mainstream audience, because the mainstream is going to be expensive and it's not going to work as well. There is many possible platforms here, TikTok or Bilibili or Kuaishou. They're different. They're very popular. Truth is, they're very popular. I like live streaming. It seems to work, but it doesn't work by itself. Yet again, we need to combine these with our product distribution. We need to combine these with our presence, with our image, with our story. If they research about us, what are they going to find? So we turn this purchase into an experience. Okay, Ruben, please. So for example, very popular, Lawson is very popular. He's based in Shenzhen. He does a lot of videos, mostly in Douyin. But his fees for a 45-second video, well, it may change, but according to Douyin, and I interviewed this person a few months back, it's a standard and it's around 20,000 euros per 45 seconds video, which means that to get that investment back, we need to get a lot of sales, right? Of course, you may negotiate the price and get a final understanding, but on Douyin, that's what seems to be his standard rate. So to be able to obtain a return out of such an investment for mainstream audiences may be a bit complicated if we're not mainstream seller. We may have to look for a more specialized KOL, but live streaming could be done with chefs, could be done with sommeliers. We have to look a smaller approach that connects better with our audience and with our budget. I think this is essential. Our budget may get exhausted in China very easily. I wouldn't risk it all on a long shot. I would not do that. Truth is, I'm a believer that what is going to work in China is some marketing, well-targeted marketing, but mostly is daily work. I'm going to get to that in a moment. Ruben, please. So conclusions and recommendations. No magic formula. There is nothing, or I don't know anything that I could tell you and say, oh, you're not succeeding because you don't know the magic formula. But with the magic formula, everything solves. So you just go with this KOL, and yes, you'll spend some money, but it's going to work incredibly well. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. China is not an easy market because it's a competitive market. It's a market that is going to keep growing. It's a market that can give you a good future for European wines, for Bulgarian wines in particular. But you're going to have to build it up from scratch. And I don't know any other way, really. I don't know any other way of doing it. Basically, the people that make progress, there is a few things that you normally see. The first one is they're working on the ground. It's essential. You need to be here, and if not you, fine. You need to find somebody who represents you on the ground and develop the market for you and understand that this will take some time. And you need to work with this person if it is not your own team, because they have many wineries. brands. And what they normally put in your wine, as in time, in care, is a reflection of what you put in then in terms of time and care. And eventually budget as well, but we may be more restricted on budget. So if we don't have budget, time and care. Many people actually hire a person that goes to Europe for 1 year. If you did go to, well, you didn't if you're in Europe, but if you would have gone to Chengdu about a month ago, a few weeks ago, you will see how many people there, mostly ladies, but not only, also men, who have lived in Australia, in Chile, in Argentina, in France, in Europe for a year, learn about the wine, learn about the culture, and now they sell that. You will also see fakes of fake products on big big brands, but for us, you will see how there is a professional developing and gaining knowledge to represent wine. You may want to develop this person, or you may want to find a person that is already developed, but there is wine sellers. There's experience on wine in the market. Don't leave everything to your distributor. Don't. Easy examples of things we have mentioned in this webinar. The brand, the distributor says, don't worry, I'll do it for you. And you say, great, let's work for me. Almost every time they register the brand under their name, not your name. And same for marketing. If they say, don't worry, I'll do everything for your promotion, WeChat account, or your section in my WeChat account, I'll do everything. They normally don't, not everybody. There is people that deliver, but most of them, they don't do it. They're as busy. It's not that they mean not to do it. Many means to do it, but if you're busy for developing your brand, they're as busy. So don't leave the marketing to them. Don't leave the brand to them. You have to either do it yourself or work with them into this development. Remember, you have to select a target market and adapt to it. What type of consumer are we targeting? And here comes the question of somebody previously who said, Anya, I believe, who said, how do I enter the gift channel? Is it the right moment to answer that question? How do I enter the gift channel? Again, it's not a channel anymore. It's a culture. It used to be a channel. It used to be shops for gifting, distributors that would serve gifting. That's no longer the case. It was not the case before COVID, but after COVID, that's gone. That's dead. But the gifting is there. How do you purposefully address the gifting? Well, it has a lot to do with packaging. What you normally see here for Chinese New Year is that the wine bottles, they've produced locally a cover, like a box to protect it, with either very specific things from Bulgaria in your case, or Europe, or or things connecting to the seasonality like Chinese New Year, or both. So you have both a connection between Chinese New Year and the seasonality. This happens a lot. This is the way to address it. It's about a specific packaging and a specific marketing on the season. This may be better pushed online at the moment. And this is going to require that you have an online sales structure, or you work with somebody with an online sales structure. Also, that you leave a little bit of margin to pay for this packaging and extra marketing, okay? And that the product has to be perceived as something special or unique. If it is a standard bottle of red wine with nothing that can be differentiated, you need to have a very good origin to be a very good gift or a very good price. But if you're caught in the middle, like most of us, we're caught in the middle, then you need to work on the packaging and marketing if you want to make it different for a gifting channel, okay? Remember, it's an O2O approach. If you don't have a WeChat account, or your distributor have a section for you in a WeChat account, if you don't have a QR code on the bottle, it's complicated. It's very complicated that you're going to get any message across. That's what the people are expecting in China at the moment. Even if you do 20 events, people are not going to remember everything you say, and you're not going to be there to explain to every single consumer. Somebody wants to buy the bottle, turns around, sees the QR code, scans, it's another story. You get a better chance to actually close the sale. So you have to keep coming whenever possible to the fairs. I particularly like the one in Chengdu for wine, but it's not the only one. And you need to keep working with your sales representative or your distributor or distributors in developing the market. This pays off, only takes some time. Ruben, please. Examples of what people do. There is a lot of direct sales right now. Distributors are not only trying to sell in shops and online shops, but they organize dinners. This is a Ningxia tasting that I went a few weeks ago. Wines from Ningxia, produced by Chinese wineries and produced by foreign wineries operating in China. And the distributor basically introduces the wines and the story, a bit like if it would be a person you know, more than a sales pitch. It's an introduction of the wines with the dinner. It's a reduced group of people. It could be in the house of somebody. This is becoming very popular. Another distributor from Spain, what they want to do is sell the wines that they distribute. But the guy, what offers is, okay, I'll go to your place, I'll do a paella with your friends, and I'll introduce the wines at the same time. Experiences. Otherwise, online will mostly beat you. Dinners, lunch, including the food, mixing it, the experience. This is what's working. It's working quite well. Obviously, it's a lot of work from the side of the distributor, but this is growing, and this is actually representing a relevant part of the sales, particularly for a sophisticated consumer that we were mentioning before. Okay, Ruben, can we move on? So what can European SMEs do? Okay, you try to be present as much as possible, have your own team in China. That's probably hard. Your own team can be one person, but that may be, we may not have the resources. It's very hard to come right now, but we may have a third party representing. This is physical presence. You can also have a virtual presence, your WeChat account or other accounts, and you are to keep constant communication, okay? Chinese were not very good. They like face-to-face. They were not very good at video conferences for some time, but they're becoming more acceptance. So there's more B2B gatherings. I'm not going to say they're the most popular thing. Chinese love to go for dinner and then discuss business there, but video conferences are growing. So these B2B matchmakings are actually improving. Next year, I hope that you can come back and then things will be easier. Ruben, can we move to the next one? Remember, we need to keep an eye on this year. We need to keep an eye on e-commerce. That's actually quite important. We need to do something on e-commerce. It's going to be very hard, a strategy where you have no e-commerce at all. The people doing that was basically selling at Horeca, and that at the moment obviously has been affected by COVID quite a bit. We need to be flexible. We need to, it's been hard times, but I want to say the following, it's been hard times for everybody. Chinese are going to keep consuming wines. Your ability to handle the situation better than the competitors is as important as your wine. I know your wine is unique, but all the wine producers say their wine is unique. So a good product is not enough. Make your company management a competitive advantage. Do things different. Use WeChat. Get people on the ground. Don't leave everything for your importer. Understand China a little bit. Do O2O interconnection. These, most of the wineries in the world don't do. And this is where you can build an advantage as big or probably bigger than selling your wine, because your wine is unique, but there's many unique wines according to the wineries out there in the world, okay? Ruben, please. Also, you can consider cooperative strategies. If we're small and China is complex, we may not have the resources to go alone into China. It's just a matter of fact. If we put them there, we cannot put them elsewhere. We don't have that many. What can we do? It's just China too complex for us. And not necessarily. You can actually partner with other products that are complementary to yours, other Bulgarian wines, other European wines, other Bulgarian food and drinks, other European food and drinks, many options with similar needs and complementary portfolio to a large extent, and then try to do things together. This is probably going to be much to your advantage if you're able to coordinate the effort. But if you're able to coordinate the effort, it is a huge advantage because you can pool resources and you become more attractive. It's easier to offer an experience because you get more products in the basket of experiences, okay? There is EU-funded campaigns. There is national-funded campaigns. There is group of exporters cooperating together. There is options. And of course, you have the EU SME Centre to provide guidance and support as you penetrate the market. Ruben, please. So this basically takes us to the end of our time. I have still a few questions to answer. So I'm going to take those questions first. And if you have more, please ask me or Ruben. I hope this presentation is being clear. That's what we were looking for. Whether you're going to get the slides, yes, tomorrow you'll get a deck of PDF slides. So remember, the slides help if you check them soon from now, so you remember the explanations. Otherwise, it's not as clear in 6 months from now, but that's fine. Questions that we have. Can we get the statistics of steel exports of wine from Luxembourg? Yes, that you can get. That should be easy for you to get. Luxembourg provides it. China also provides them. As the EU SME Centre, there is the tables with all the countries. I don't know if Luxembourg actually exports any wine and steel wine to China, but it will show there. I have another question saying, if I have a 10 euros wine in Italy, I guess FOB, what will be the price in China? Remember, this depends a lot on your strategy. If you're trying to sell as fast as possible online, price will be different on trying to position in high-end restaurants. But from a similar retail point, if you're FOB 10 euros, you should be between 25 to 30 euros in China. We have expensive shipping nowadays, which doesn't make things easier, but more or less, most of the brands and for most of the strategy, that would be your price range. And then somebody asking about trademark registration. Well, trademark registration, you can basically connect with a supplier of services in Europe who can do it, but if it's done from Europe, requires one additional step, or you can address a supplier of services in China, and then they can also do it. For more information on trademarks, the European Union has the EU IPR help desk, which operates similar of the EU SME Centre, or operated at least, but for issues of trademarks in China. Okay, so you can check those sources. There is suppliers in Europe that can do it. There is suppliers in China that could do it. More questions, ladies and gentlemen, please.
Actually, Pablo, we have received some questions by email. I received them.
Yeah.
I put them actually on the chat function. There are quite a lot from one of the participants. So perhaps if there are no other questions coming up right now, perhaps you can look into them.
Okay, so where can I find the import tax for wine and liquor, make of grapes with 18% volume? You need to look for your tariff code or for your edge case code with the first 4 digits. You will be able to find it at Market Access Database. The European Union provides with this information. Just make sure what is your tariff code. Input the tariff code in the country at Market Access Database, data importers data for export formalities. Let me see that I don't miss the questions because they're quite long. Is it possible to register a label design? It is possible. It doesn't mean that all the label designs can be registered, but of course it is possible and it is recommended, at least the key elements. It is absolutely necessary to register the trademark or the design of a label. It is not legally compulsory, but basically if you don't do it, I can say that you're not understanding China, you're taking a huge risk for a small amount of money, and we have tough odds ahead. It's very important. It's not like in Europe. There is people that basically do that as a business, raise their trademarks, and then sell it to their owners. Let's put it this way. I've seen these, and it will cost a fortune, or that label will be blocked for you. It will not be your label, basically. It will be the other person's label. So I don't recommend that if we don't register the label, really, we're not ready for China. It's as simple as that. 15 years seeing it. So I'm going to be a bit direct to save you pain and tears. If you are not registering your trademark before exposing yourself to China, you're taking a huge risk. is if you don't have the budget at the moment, just wait. When you have the budget, consider China. If you don't think it's important, I have a number of unfortunate stories to tell you. This is less than €1,000 to register a trademark. It should be. It depends who gives you the service, how much information, each one can put its price, but it should be around that. It is important to participate on a wine liquor fair in China. It depends on your strategy, but I would say yes, it helps. Which one? It depends again on your strategy, but my favorite is the one in Chengdu that just finished a few weeks ago. Chinese are open to new drinks, to try them, yes. To repeat the purchase, it depends a lot on the marketing we do. Let me see what questions are there. If this product is not known in Chinese market, is it possible to introduce it in this market? How can we do it? We have to go product by product. To introduce a non-known product in the Chinese market, it takes time, it's expensive. So we need to see the product and look for a niche to enter initially. Don't have to say your budget is small. The budget of everybody in this chat is small. That's why we're the SME Center. If we would be large corporations, we wouldn't be here. And that's it. That's the way we are. It's not something, it's the way we are. Simply speaking, is the way we are. That's why we never recommend very expensive activities. We recommend very operational things for very clear objectives, because otherwise we just don't do it. That's what we're used to, and that's fine. What are the possibilities of a small company to find market there? That's what the presentation was about. There is the possibility. It will take a little bit of time. You may not see a return immediately. Most of the wineries selling in China are SMEs. It's true that bigger corporations do more volume, but a lot of SMEs selling in China. Influencer in the market, how to use TikTok. This I have explained, probably the question was from earlier. The use of KOLs, live streaming influencers may be positive, but they're not cheap. And we're not targeting mainstream, or unless you're targeting mainstream and you have a large budget. So you have to be very careful that some well-known brand of a relatively inexpensive product does very well with the KOL doesn't mean that our small winery with a good value for the money wine is going to do equally well with the same KOL. It probably will consume our budget. So we have to be careful how much money we put in KOLs. You have to be connected to our distribution network. So initially we'll do a small. We'll work more with some chefs and sommelier more than expensive KOLs that actually do 3 posts or 3 live streaming a day or 2. Today you're selling your wine, in the afternoon they're selling somebody else's wine, and then the next morning a beer. You have to be careful with this because it may be hard to get your investment back if our budgets are not large, okay? On trademark, one more question. It is compulsory to translate the brand. This is the thing. When you register, and you may not register anything, you may register a logo, no? In which way that's the best, because it doesn't matter of the language. You may register your brand in Chinese, in English, or in your original language. Do you need to register in Chinese? You don't have to do anything, but it's recommended. How do you expect the Chinese to call your product? Because they're not going to read it right. It's very rare. They will read it wrong. They will not know how to read it. They will call it something. You need to guide them in this process. You need to make a brand has to be easy to recognize, easy to pronounce, has to evoke positive things. And we need to do this with our Chinese brand. If it is hard to pronounce, they won't. And if they want, they buy less. It's simple as that. So I do recommend that we have a Chinese translation of our brand. Now, how to register it is another matter. Every time you register something, you pay. So you need to study a little bit the situation and decide whether you're just going to do the logo or the logo and the Chinese brand separated or together. This will depend on many things, mostly on the complexity or simplicity of everything you're putting in the picture. that's as far as I can go because it will take a long time to talk about trademark more in detail. Laura, do you think I left a few questions or I get them all?
I think you cover most of them. You were pretty fast, so perhaps we might have left one or two unanswered. But what we are going to do is I will recap on them, and if there is any missing question, we can just send an email back to the person and provide them with the necessary information. From our side, I think I only have to thank you, well, to Events and to you and to Ruben for being available here today. It was a very interesting introduction into the market because, as you said, well, it's difficult to be able to give the keys into the wine sector in China in such a brief session. But for those who are willing for more and looking forward, please use our survey to let us know, because then we will be able to supply this demand. And don't forget that we have some materials on our website related to this market that might be supporting also the design and the implementation of your market strategy into China.